Well, good day and welcome to you. It is July the 28th. I hope you're having a wonderful day wherever you happen to be. My name is Gary Willing. I want to welcome you to Search for Signs and just point out, if you want to know more about this information, I have included links to websites that I think give you really good background information about Maitreya and the Masters of Wisdom. But more importantly, the vast majority of those websites talk about one or other of the priorities of the teacher for humanity. Those are the most important things. So you can look at this a lot of different ways, educate yourself about this information and however you want to do it, but it's really truly about the priorities of Maitreya and what we can do to help. The need for peace, the need to end hunger, the need to save our environment, those kind of things. So hopefully you'll look into it, see if there's anything to it or not, and then do something about it. Even if you don't believe what I'm saying about Maitreya, hopefully you'll inspire you to do something to help save the planet. All right, now, typically, I get comments that come my way. And then I'll either address the comment or I won't. It just depends on whether I think that it adds to the discussion or not. That's my gauge. And then I'll oftentimes get questions that come my way and I'll try to answer it however best I can, based on this information and so forth. Now, this is something different. This is actually a request for my opinion. Now, I have to say, he is asking me for my opinion before I give it to him. If he was talking to my grandfather on my dad's side, you wouldn't have even had to ask him for his opinion. He would have just given it to you anyway. He was quite unbearable to be around from time to time. Had a heart of gold, but I'll tell you what, he had no problem telling you exactly how he thought about anything, you included. And you didn't even have to ask him. That's how he saved you that amount of time, right? You didn't have to ask him anything. He would just tell you. I'm sure you know people like this. Yeah, they're a peach to be around from time to time. But anyway, he asked me for my opinion about some information that came his way. Now, this comment is quite long, so I'll kind of read it as quickly as I possibly can. I do hope you see this comment and reply because I'm actually very interested to hear your perspective. Everything that you spoke of in this video resonates. Now, he's talking about the video I put up yesterday, What is a Master? And I actually read an article by one of these masters talking about the path of return that each individual takes, either has taken or eventually will take to become a perfectly divine human being like these masters. So coming from one of these masters, I would assume he knows what he's talking about. But it also talked about the problems of today, the violence, the chaos, the uncertainty, the divisions, all those kind of things, as a necessary point of the path that we as a group are taking in order to become perfectly divine. So it's not just about the individual becoming a master. It's about all of humanity doing it at the same, doing it together, So it's quite an extraordinary article, very simple to read, but it's just quite an extraordinary article about what it means to be a master, what is a master, and that kind of thing. Anyway, I'm sorry. Currently, I am in probationary pending membership to a group called the Fraternity of Hidden Light, and the lessons taught coming into this fraternity, as well as many other orders that teach the Gnostic path. They say the same thing about what a master is. They also explain in detail the involution of mankind journeying from the original source into ignorance in order to make their way back through countless incarnations. You mentioned Alice Bailey and another. I would most highly suggest for you to look at all the writings and teachings of the forefathers of these orders and see how magnificently they run parallel with the message you are presenting in these videos. One book especially is called Esoteric Orders and Their Agenda by Dion Fortune. There is an audio book version of it right here on YouTube. If you are pressed for time and can't get to reading or listening to it all, then you should definitely at least listen to a review or skim through certain chapters you may find rather intriguing. I would love to hear a vid from you that speaks about the link between these ancient mystery school orders and their relation to Maitreya. With regards, Nick. Well, thank you very much for that, Nick. I did listen to a bit. I listened to maybe like 20, 30 minutes of one of the audio books that you were talking about. I do want to go back and listen to it, some more of it and stuff, but thank you for introducing me to it. I didn't know who Dion Fortune was. The book, according to the audio book, it was written in 1928, and it reads a lot like Helena Blavatsky, which when you said, I mentioned Alice Bailey and another, that's the another. So Helena Blavatsky, if you don't know, she was the first person to come before the public eye and tell the public about the masters. Information that was long forgotten for eons. And she apparently lived with several of these masters for quite some time, learned from them, saw that they were real, that they were just as physical as you and I, but living in the Himalayas and so forth. And she lived with them for quite some time. Very advanced disciple. If you know anything about the initiations and so forth, her consciousness, she was on the same level as Jesus was when he was in Palestine. Very, very, very advanced disciple. Slightly under somebody like Leonardo da Vinci was when he was Leonardo da Vinci. And at the same level as Krishnamurti. So not very many people that we know about are on that point of evolution, but she was very advanced. These masters asked her if she would inform the public of their existence, and she made a vow in 1875 that she would do that, and she did that. She set out to tell the world as best she possibly could, by any means that she possibly could, that these masters existed. Even to this day, over 100 years from when she started to talk to the public about it, you will probably get more information by far about how bad of an individual she is than all the good that she did. In time, that will change because people will know exactly who she was and what she did. But right now, the press on her is really, really bad. But she didn't care. She was a badass, and she just went through it anyway. And did what she needed to do. Not many people would have done it. But she informed the public about these masters. But her writings are very similar to, or Dion Fortune's writings are very similar to Helena Blavatsky. So I don't know anything about this guy. I don't know if he was a part of the Theosophical Society, which was a group that she formed. But other writers like her, like Ledbetter and Annie Besant and so forth, read a lot like Helena Blavatsky. But I found the times that I read her books very difficult to read. And I'm not saying it's in the writings, it's in the reader. You know what I'm saying? As I say, it's above my pay grade. And then if you look at Alice Bailey, the other person you mentioned, the master that wrote all the information through her telepathically, he's in the top left corner of this picture, the master Jwal Khul. It reads like a college textbook. It's very dry. They're not page turners by any stretch. And it's about incredible esoteric truths in the same way that Helena Blavatsky was talking about, but very much cut and dry, but very complex. Like I said, like a college textbook, like if you were reading about calculus on a college level, like that kind of thing. Not anything that you're like, oh my God, I can't believe, what's the answer to that calculus question? You know what I mean? It's the same kind of deal. But he said something in one of his books that I remember very distinctly. Out of all the things that he wrote, that I remember this very distinctly. It made me feel really good. Which I'm sure he wasn't saying it for this person to feel good about himself, but he said he was writing those texts not for this generation or the subsequent generations, but for future generations that would understand it better. So in time, we'll understand the information coming from Helena Blavatsky and what Dion Fortune was talking about and Alice Bailey and so forth. So there is a lot to it. Now, looking at the esoteric teachers that talk about this, that are prominent, right? Helena Blavatsky, Alice Bailey, Helena Roerich, and Benjamin Creme, the four. I would say Benjamin Creme's writings, for me, are really, it resonates with me more, not because the other people weren't speaking the truth on anything. It was just, he simplified it in a way that made it easier for somebody like me to understand, and especially to apply. It's about the application of the information, not about the learning of it per se, because just like anything else, it's just words on a page until you apply it. It's the same thing I talk about in terms of the Bible. People get caught up in ideology of the Bible. They pedalize Jesus as the only true Son of God, but it doesn't really, you can't really apply that to your life and have it, change your life and those around you. You know what I mean? But if you look at the teachings of Jesus, love one another, the need for forgiveness, those kind of things, the need to live within the law of cause and effects, as he was talking about, what you sow shall you reap. If you just took those and forgot about everything else, those things would change your life for the better. And you would live a Christ-like life, as they like to say in the church, right? But reading the ideology and all the scriptures of different things that were written by different people in the Old and New Testament, in and of itself I haven't found a single person that does that really studies the Bible in that way, that it's changed their life and they've applied it, and they can apply all those ideologies to their life and make it better for themselves. Even the Ten Commandments, as much as people like to talk about the Ten Commandments and so forth, does it really, I mean, everyone pretty much knows the Ten Commandments. Do you pretty much live by it? I mean, hopefully nobody kills anybody, right? But that's just because we have laws that will put you in jail or put you to death if you do, right? But for the most part, the lying, the cheating, the stealing, the fornication, all that kind of stuff, does that really keep somebody from doing it? Probably not, And then if you look at some of the other ideologies in the Bible in terms of, I know I'm going off on a tangent, but it kind of goes along the lines of the same thing as some of these esoteric teachings. But until you can apply it, it doesn't mean anything. And the one thing about, I'll say this before I talk about the mystery schools and those kind of things that you were wanting me to talk about, is the teachings of Maitreya are very simple. And most of us, if not nearly all of us, have not recognized Maitreya on TV because his teachings are that simple. Even though he's teaching humanity heart to heart right now on TV, it's so simple. It's not out of the ordinary. It's not, in that regard, although he's teaching probably wonderful esoteric truths, that people don't even realize that it's the Lord of Love talking to them. You kind of get what I'm saying? So when he's out known for who he is, his teachings will be very, very simple, very easy to apply. And it will awaken the truth within the hearts of all of us to the point where we will, oh, that makes complete sense. Almost to where we were probably like, I thought about that all along, but he just articulated it better than me, because he's speaking heart to heart in that way. The teachings of Alice Bailey, the teachings of Helena Blavatsky, this Dion Fortune, and even some of the teachings of Benjamin Creme are fascinating. And if you apply them, they can change your life. But if you kind of go down this rabbit hole of just learning it, it doesn't mean anything. Does that make sense? So I would say just be careful of that. If you wanted my perspective on it, I would because I've done that. I've made that mistake. Looked at the ideology of even these esoteric teachings, just as a religious fundamentalist looks at the ideology of the Bible and didn't apply the information. It wasn't until I started to really simplify it and look at it and apply it to my life that it changed my life. But even the times that I met Maitreya, his teachings were so simple. Like one of the things he said to me is, peace always starts from within. Now, it's not anything that you can get right away. You have to keep applying it. You have to keep looking at it and those kind of things. And that's one of the reasons why I recommend people listen to and look at and study Krishnamurti, who came from the Theosophical Society, the same group that Helena Blavatsky wrote. And like I said, I have no moral ground to stand on this, but I do think that this Dion Fortune is heavily influenced by Helena Blavatsky. Not that there's anything wrong with that. It's just, but if you look at it and you look at some of the other writings coming from the Theosophical Society, Ledbetter, Annie Besant, like I said, wonderful truths in those things. But if you look at Krishnamurti, his was about the application of the teachings in a very simplified way. And Maitreya himself, in speaking about Krishnamurti, once said, his teachings are the truest to Maitreya's own teachings. And he even referred to him as a true disciple. But Krishnamurti was all about the application, all about looking at it and being objective and courageous enough to look at your own intention, your own, thoughts on things. That's where you'll grow. Does that make sense? And not in the learning of some of this extraneous esoteric matters in those ways. Quite fascinating. There's nothing wrong with learning those things. It's far more important to apply it, and that will change your life more than anything. And if you were to ask even somebody like Benjamin Creme, who talked about initiation just as these other people did, because he came from that school of thought, the rays, those kind of things, and some of these other esoteric teachings, even truths about the universe and so forth, he would tell you, I know enough about Benjamin Creme, I knew him well enough that I can say this. I very rarely put words in his mouth. But if you were to ask him, what's the most important thing to take away from his books, he would say it was the priorities of Maitreya, the need to end the suffering of the world, the hunger of the world, to help influence our world leaders, talk about it amongst our family and friends about the need for peace. He would say that was the most important thing, not any of this other stuff. You can go your whole life and not ever have any interest in any of that stuff and still do wonderful work. In fact, the majority of the very, very advanced disciples in this world have no interest in any of that information, but yet they do the work on a daily basis. And if it wasn't for them, we would be in a very, very sorry shape of existence. But very advanced, some of them even working closely hand in hand with one of these masters consciously. There's a lot of them in the public, in the political field or the economic field as business leaders, spiritual, not spiritual leaders, but in the medical field and so forth, that are doing great work on the priorities of these masters, serving humanity in that way, that have absolutely no interest in the work of Helena Blavatsky or Alice Bailey or even Benjamin Creme. So to me, it's more important about serving humanity, helping to alleviate the suffering in that way. You'll grow more as a person than you will. But again, the teachings of Maitreya are very, very simple, very easy to apply. Even the most uneducated members of humanity will understand what he's saying when we start to hear him, because they'll feel it in his heart and learn it in that way. Now, the mystery schools and how they relate to Maitreya, they are one of Maitreya's priorities. Okay, so I'm not saying they aren't, but it's a priority that's not going to be able to take place until after some things take place first, like the principle of sharing, peace is established, and that kind of thing. But from what I understand, and this is coming from the Alice Bailey books, I have no personal experience or personal memories of this. I'm only regurgitating what I read in her books. Okay, so let's get that straight. When a person sleeps, they actually attend a school. Now, it depends on where you're at in your point of evolution is which school you go to. The vast majority of average humanity goes to the halls of ignorance, and they learn whatever they learn. And it takes a long time for what they learn in those schools to start to really be assimilated and used by the conscious personality in everyday life. It takes a long time. It might even take lifetimes for a lesson that they learned in their sleep to hit the rubber meet the road in the real life, right? Once they get advanced enough, they move into the halls of learning, and then they are taken under the tutelage of a very, very advanced disciple. Not a master, but a very advanced disciple, from what I understand it. Same kind of thing. It takes a long time, but not quite as long, to learn the lessons in the school, in your sleep, and apply it in your everyday life. And what helps is they start to get this aspiration for learning, like meditation or yoga or something like that. And then they take that on, and then they start to connect with their soul that way. And the learning becomes far more rapid than it was, but still slower than the next school that they go to, the halls of wisdom, where they're actually taken under the tutelage of then a master, and is taught directly from a master on the inner planes. And again, it does take time for that information to seep into the consciousness of the person in the everyday life, but it's quicker than the halls of ignorance for sure. Now, the priorities of Maitreya is the introduction to the mysteries. He will be teaching this along with some of the other masters, like the Master Moria, the Master DK, even the Master Jesus will be teaching the religious groups some of the mysteries within the Bible, that we will eventually learn. But these mystery schools that the Master DK wrote about, that are on the inner planes now, will eventually be on the physical plane in the future. And we'll travel to those. There'll be several. He listed the areas that they will eventually be in, but they'll be like colleges, and people will go to them and they'll learn. They'll learn from a disciple, like a very advanced disciple, like a Krishnamurti or a Helena Blavatsky or a Benjamin Creme or something like this, somebody of that stature. And they'll learn from them, and they'll go to their class, and they'll study and those kind of things. They'll try to apply it to their life, of course. And then there'll be advanced schools those are the preparatory schools, and then there'll be advanced schools that we'll go to and learn directly from a master in that way. And the teachings then will be a lot quicker, because it won't, we will remember what we were learning, right? So we won't have to wait for it to eventually kick in. You know what I mean? It'll be, much more advanced and much learning. But now, I would say that any mystery school that has a website or whatever like that, it's not, if you ask me my opinion on it, my perspective on it, to me it's just a grift. There's not a lot to any of that stuff. You know, the mystery schools that the Alice Bailey was talking about it's going to be a while before those start to be constructed, but eventually they will be. But this information, this is the other thing too. This can be applied to anything. It should be given freely. You know, if you look at this channel, right? It's a small little YouTube channel talking about the Masters. I don't charge anybody anything. I don't ask for donations. And I'm not saying that to make myself, you know, to put myself, you know, people to look at me different. I'm saying that this is just the way that I see this information. It's not my information to sell. You know what I mean? It should be given freely to anybody. That's my only interest in it. If you look at Benjamin Creme, he never made a dime off of his lectures or his books even. And the times that I worked with the Share International group throughout the past, you know, when we were giving talks and selling books, it wasn't about the sale of the books at all, right? And there were more times than not when somebody would talk and express interest in a book and then they didn't have money to pay for the book. We as the individuals in this group would pull our money together and pay for the book for them, right? I mean, we didn't make any money off that book as a group. So I'm always really weary when groups try to sell spiritual information, you know, because to me that turns me right off. It's like any kind of guru that sells information. And there's a lot of gurus that are very rich. And then if you look at the churches, that do the same thing, right? They're selling spiritual truths to people who can get it themselves, right? And I remember Krishnamurti was saying the same thing. It used to really kind of not piss him off, but you could tell it kind of pissed him off when these he would call it the gurus, you know, making those money, the guru. He would really get kind of triggered about that. But he would say that this information should be free, you know, for you. And when you see Maitreya on TV, that information that he gives, his teachings, all this kind of, will be free. There will be no making money for him in that regard, you know. And I don't know. That's just, to me, that's the litmus test of whether I should. I mean, I'm kind of a cheap person anyway, so I'm not going to put money into much anyway. But the real the teachings of these things that, you know, should be freely given. And that's just my only perspective on those things. But I did enjoy listening to that audiobook by Dion Fortin. I'm glad you told me about it. I definitely want to go back and listen to it. So hopefully my perspective helped. You know, you did ask me. Like I said, I'm in the clear. You at least asked me for my perspective, Nick, and I really appreciate you taking the time to do that. And I hope you have a great day along with everybody else.
Take
you guys
action
take care
and help SOP save our planet. Thanks for listening, and we look forward to talking to you again in future videos.